I am looking for somebody that is patient, compassionate, and has empathy. Because in the end, what is a clinic? It's a group of individuals trying to take care of patients. And so if you need somebody in there that can see each employee as an individual and can try to help that person. And so, I do want a certain amount of compassion and empathy because we can teach a spreadsheet, or we can teach profit and loss statements, but it's really sometimes it's hard to teach empathy.
Welcome to the Ophthalmology Experience Season 2, powered by Boost Patients. Today, we're joined by Lance Baldwin. He's the Chief Operating Officer and the Director of Nursing at Northwest Eye Surgeons. With a career dedicated to improving clinic and surgery center operations, Lance has led large teams, optimized workflows, and driven cultural change that strengthens staff unity and patient outcomes. A former professor of nursing and lifelong learner, he's also passionate about mentoring the next generation of healthcare leaders while ensuring efficiency and profitability across multiple facilities. Lance, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Guido. It's a pleasure to be here.
So in the intro, we mentioned you were a professor of nursing. I had no idea. So I previously have considered going into education because I'm tired of dealing with all the craziness we deal with every day. But did you come from the opposite direction, and why would you do that?
Honestly, I really love education, and I still consider myself an educator and a teacher. But honestly, there was just an opportunity to grow into more of the management and leadership aspects of nursing, and so I took that opportunity to
Yeah.
see where it would take me. I typically would rotate roles every couple of years, and I've been in ophthalmology 10 years and been really loving it.
So is there anything that you've learned from your career as a professor of nursing that you still use today in your role?
Absolutely. It, Growth just it takes time. It's like a tree. Trees don't grow overnight.
Mhm.
I guess weeds do, but a tree, it takes time. And so when you have a new leader or a new doctor, uh, you have to give them time, and you have to give them an opportunity to mature. You have to give them an opportunity to make mistakes, and that's what when I was teaching young nurses. I realized that there would be opportunities for them to make mistakes, and I wanted them to learn from that, and that continues even in the post education aspects. When you have something new.
Yeah. No, makes sense. I feel like so my wife's a therapist, and I tell her, I'm like, you know what? I feel like probably do more therapy, or at least the same amount of therapy on a daily basis that you do, and what I do, because I feel like that's a lot of what we do is help guide, coach, teach, mentor, and then therapy, and
Yeah.
and so, um, and I want to, we got the chance to catch up several times over the years, and I think just to get a little bit of a scope of your experience and kind of what you're involved in now, Northwest Eye Surgeons. What is the landscape look like for you guys? Like how many providers and offices do you have in your region?
Yeah, so we're primarily in the Pacific Northwest area. We have primarily in the Seattle, Washington, which is in the northwest corner of Washington. But we do have practice in the on the east side of Washington and even into northern Idaho. And a couple of years ago, we actually acquired a practice up in Alaska as well.
Mhm.
So, but for the most part, we're right here in the northwest, and there's 13 clinics, 7 surgery centers. We have 50 physicians. The majority of we have about 20 of them are surgeons and about 30 are optometrists. But our focus is still comprehensive surgery. So even though we have a lot of optometrists, our our primary service offering is surgical.
Mhm. Yeah, our practices are very similar in that fact that we have a similar size, a same amount of surgeon optometrist ratio, and the optometrists are key in terms of supporting the medical procedures and surgery and everything else that we do as a practice. But even in our optical business and the optometry side has also been growing too. I don't know if it's because people don't have enough money or don't want to do LASIK as much in the past year or two, and now they're deciding on glasses or contacts. But we've seen a lot of growth there too. But I think that's you and I have a shared experience in terms of that model, which I think is a great model because it creates very strong optometrists because they have so much interaction with the surgeons. And I mean, personally, when people come to me and they're like, "Who should I see?" I'm guiding them to usually one of our medical optometrists because I know the surgeons, they're awesome, but they're not going to spend as much time with the patient and then be as hand holding as our medical optometrists will be. And they play a key role, right?
Absolutely. And when I talk to, especially like our newer optometrists, when they're coming on board and getting used to our model, I tell them like treat the surgeons like a tool in your tool bag. The surgeons are there. You're taking care of the patient, and you have medications. You have your own knowledge, and but you also have surgeons there that can assist you in
Mhm.
caring for the patient, and to
Yeah.
kind of see it in that way.
Yeah, because you can sometimes you have to get buy-in from the optometrist and then sometimes from the surgeons, especially like newer surgeons who aren't used to that model. I've had varying degrees of success with getting surgeon and optometrists to buy into that model. When you work with your providers, how do you get an optometrist that says, "No, I want to see patients 5 days a week on my own and my own schedule and do my own thing," or a surgeon that says, "No, I don't really need that person helping me in my clinic. I don't, I'd rather do it on my own." Like, how do you approach that buy-in?
We found a lot of success in building partnerships. So we'll say, surgeon A, these two optometrists are partnered with you, and let's say the surgeon is a glaucoma specialist. They're comprehensive, but they also have specialty glaucoma. Um, and so we'll say that this is a care team, and we want the surgeon to take the optometrist under their wing, and to let the optometrist, to work with optometrists and say, okay, this is how I like to care surgically for glaucoma. So the optometrists are in line with what the surgeon's doing, but it's that partnership that we create. We create a care team, we create a partnership, and they see themselves as working together. So we by I guess making smaller groups, it seems to work much better than rather than saying optometrists you have to work with 10 surgeons and 10 surgeons or one surgeon you have to work with 20 optometrists.
Mhm.
It's we build a smaller partnership, and that seems to be very successful when we did it that way.
For sure. And when it comes to like compensation models, I don't know, and you don't have to share. Obviously, you don't share your compensation model, but if there are any production components to providers' compensation, how do you, how might you navigate that kind of relationship?
Well, we find that that does help when we put them in the small partnership. There's overlapping compensation. So as the optometrists are seeing more patients, and they're hopefully generating more surgeries. Uh, but the surgeons that has an advantage as the optometrists grow that side of the business, and then
Mhm.
vice versa. Uh, as the surgeons do more surgeries, the optometrists incentive is also based. So there's overlap there that we created. So as they help each other uh, medically, or I guess in the business, they also help each other financially.
Yeah. Okay. And not switch gears a little bit, but more so on bringing in managers or developing managers from within the practice. I'm sure you've mentored and coached a lot of managers along your journey. What are some of the qualities that you look for someone to be a good leader?
Oh wow, that's a good question. Uh, you know, one of the struggles that we have in the medical world oftentimes is that our leaders are built off of clinicians. Our clinic managers are often technicians that showed an aptitude for taking care of patients, but they're also efficient. And we're like, hey, we have a whole new role for you that we would like you to do. Uh, and so while for for uh, for managers, we are looking for, or I'm looking for somebody that is competent in the base tasks of that organization. Whether if you're a clinic, ideally the manager is competent at being a technician and has an understanding of ophthalmology. That to me is just that's part of the package. I am looking for somebody that is patient, compassionate, and has empathy. Because in the end, what is a clinic? It's a group of individuals trying to take care of patients, and so if you need somebody in there that can see each employee as an individual and can try to help that person. And so, I do want a certain amount of compassion and empathy because we can teach a spreadsheet. We can teach profit and loss statements, but it's really sometimes it's hard to teach empathy, you know, or some of those social skills. So definitely looking for that more so than the education part because we could teach those other things. And even
Right.
going back to the whole being a technician, we can still teach somebody how to be a technician. I think your background, you were IT, if I
I
remember
was.
right.
They pulled the IT guy out of the server room, and they're like, "Hey, wanna take your hand at operations? Sure, why not? What could
Yeah,
go wrong?"
sure.
Yeah.
Quick break brought to you by Boost Patients. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably a physician, a practice admin, or maybe someone on the marketing team, and you really have a singular goal. You want new patients, more consults, higher surgery volume. And oftentimes, when you want that, you think immediately about marketing, spending more on marketing, investing more in marketing. Maybe, but probably not. We've mystery shopped over 600 practices, and there's one commonality with all of them. They're not very effective and not very good at patient follow up. So before you invest more money in marketing and more into that investment, you really need to understand how your practice is following up with new patients. So go to boostpatients.com, fill out the contact us form, and let me know that you want us to mystery shop your practice. We'll mystery shop it. We'll document how your practice follows up with your new patient lanes, and we'll share that information with you. Now, back to the show.
Well, it's true that, like you say, there's a lot of clinical staff that end up being the leaders in your practice because they end up rising to the top, looking for growth, and they many times don't have professional or formal training when it comes to all your financial statements or understanding staff cost ratios, understanding, cost of good ratios and really trying to manage the business from that perspective. So when you start developing those people, like where do you start? Because I think sometimes when I start trying to develop people in that way, they have a tendency, unless I'm really with them and have a game plan, they have a tendency to go right to the EBITDA whenever they get their financial statement. Did I do well or not? And then they just keep going, right?
Yeah. Uh, you know, w- ideally we try to teach them step by step. I One of the things that we introduced many years ago is kind of an intermediate step. So we have oftentimes you have leads or supervisors, so you have that opportunity for individuals to lead and guide others, um, and so we give them that opportunity without all the uh, financial, the business burden
Mhm.
kind of thing that happens. So they can learn some of those people skills and some of those basic leadership skills. And then when we promote them to a manager, uh, then it's just, again, it's a line upon line process where we're trying to mentor them through learning the business aspect. And we, we, I definitely try to be very clear up front. Like, we know that we're putting you in a new role. I know that you don't have experience with this. We're going to help you. We don't expect you to know in 6 weeks.
Mhm.
I often tell managers, like, I don't expect you to be good at this job for, I don't know, 3 years. Honestly,
Yeah, I
it's
tell
good.
them I've been doing this for 15, 20 years and I'm still not good, or I'm still not as good as I want to be. So don't beat yourself up. It takes
Yeah.
time and it takes going through the fire a lot to really learn those lessons and sticking with it, right? I mean, because sometimes when they hit those first crises in their management career, it can be a defining moment. Like, yeah, I can't do this. I can't handle it. So how do you coach them when they hit that first, like, wow, this is a big thing I need to deal with in my career?
You know, first I think there's a lot of truth to fake it till you make it.
Mhm.
Yeah, so there's certain aspect of that, telling them like, hey, like you're the one to, even if you don't feel like the whole what's it called, imposter syndrome.
Yeah,
Even though you don't feel like you're able to do
have all
this,
the answers. Yeah.
yeah, it's okay to do what you can. The other thing is, while I'm mentoring a manager or even a director, if there is a issue and they come to me for help, uh, I've trained them all like, don't come and ask, what am I going to do?
Mhm,
You should come with a plan,
mhm,
and then we'll talk about your plan and see if it's an effective plan or not. And because oftentimes, and that's part of the learning process, they'll have something, they'll have some kind of fire or something going on, and they'll come to me like, I'm not sure what to do. And I'm like, well, what's your best idea? Give me something here. And just coaching them like, I'm happy to help you. I know the answer to, or have a good idea what to do, but I want them to come up with an idea. And it's great. Sometimes they'll surprise you with something better than what you might have had in mind.
yeah,
and but just that step by step process and giving them time, and then also giving them some grace when they do make a mistake. I For my own life, I remember we had a contract that was I was supposed to cancel, and I was the one that was supposed to send in the written confirmation that it was canceled. I totally forgot to do it, and the accounting team's like, "Hey, why are we still paying on this?" And as we dug into it, uh, we realized that it was my responsibility, that we actually paid an extra $120,000. I think it was like $120,000. Luckily,
mhm,
my mentor is like, we make mistakes, learn from this one, and let's move on. Uh,
yeah, yeah.
Hopefully, not everybody else's mistake is
Don't make too
$120,000,
many
but
of them.
yeah,
Yeah. Um, yeah, no, I think that's a great thing to reiterate, which is whenever you have them coming to them, or sorry, coming to you with those struggles, that you more so ask the question, what do you think? What do you think we should do? Because I think the inclination of people, managers, and I think even myself and us, likely at times, is that you want to fix a problem and move on, and you want to help. But then no growth occurs if the same people are always fixing the same problems, and not others are not having the opportunity to do so. Then there's not growth, right, on the part of those individuals. So I think that's a
absolutely.
great thing for you to bring up. And and especially as you have clinical managers or managers who may not have as much experience in the industry, who have a perspective that maybe someone who's been doing it longer has, and you make decisions for certain reasons. And sometimes it might seem a little bit more about money than patient care. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm worried about driving too much. Hey, let's hit these goals and numbers, as opposed to, let's give and make sure we say, let's give great patient care, which is first and foremost, and then the numbers will take care of themselves. But how do you explain when you're mentoring managers how to deliver that message, and how to balance the business needs and then the clinical needs, and how to say that in the right way that drives people to be motivated?
Yeah, that's a real tough one. You know, Oftentimes, what I try to do personally and also with my managers is I want them to exhibit that compassion and that drive for patient care on a daily basis. So, like, when they're making a decision about a patient, like an example is, a patient shows up 45 minutes late. In our organization, the managers have that ability to say, "Oh, you're gonna have to reschedule," or whatever. They look at the whole. They have a big picture. They look at the whole situation. But ideally, the manager is demonstrating the focus on the patient on a day-to-day basis, so that when they do have to talk about strategies and things that might be more focused on goals and numbers, the team knows that the manager on a daily basis is focused on the patient, and this is part of the business, and the manager has to kind of straddle that, on both sides of the line. Uh, they're where they are focused on the patient, and the patient experience, the patient's safety, but they also have to. They can't spend more money than you got.
Right.
In the end, that's one of the first things you teach the managers is like there's income and outcome, and there's costs. So you can't make your costs can't be more than your income, plain and simple. Otherwise, we'll have to close the business, and then no patients get cared for.
Right.
So
And I think we can use an example, and maybe you can tell me how you generally handle these situations of like a surgery patient. Because most patients, I'm sure in your practice and in our practice, most patients have great surgical outcomes, but sometimes they don't always. And so you'll have situations where they meet with a surgeon, and the surgeons aren't always the most eloquent at handling those situations, and they may be like, just give them their money back, or whatever. And the manager or a manager might kind of go to that the first, their first solution is, oh, we'll give them their money back, and because they didn't get the outcome they want. How do you, when those situations come up, what's your first thing that you start to do in order to ask questions, figure out the right answer? Because I've been in it, more times than I'd like, and I feel like there's not a black and white answer. How do you navigate it?
So ideally, it's a case by case basis, and it's a partnership with the surgeon and the organization, because the surgeon is the one that provided these services, and it's for them. It's somewhat their reputation, their skill set that's kind of being questioned, and the surgeon also realizes, despite our best efforts, sometimes the patient's anatomy, the technology at the time, et cetera, is only going to do so much. And even
Mhm.
when they've told the patient, oftentimes they've told the patient going into it, like, we're only going to be able to do so much. But it's a case by case basis. It's partnership with the surgeon on it. I don't like to do any kind of refund without the surgeon's approval.
Mhm.
Because, like, again, it is their partly their livelihood, partly their skill set, partly their reputation. So I want to make sure that we're on the same page with them. And I will generally, 99% of the time, we'll go with what the surgeon wants to do. And if the surgeon says, I don't feel I've clearly given them enough information, I don't feel we should refund them,
Mhm.
then we'll back the surgeon on that. And then the other end of the spectrum, sometimes the patient's just an awful patient to deal with.
Mhm.
And even though the surgeon did a great job, if the surgeon's like, just refund it just so I don't have to deal with it anymore,
Mhm.
we'll still back the
Sure.
patient. We'll still back
Yeah.
the surgeon
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a tough one. It's always a tough one, and that's the probably the most extreme example. But there's always smaller examples like refraction fee, or they weren't aware of their deductible, or so they claim, or whatever. And sometimes we have to treat them to enter those situations with compassion, yet with some kind of logic and business sense, right?
Yeah, we typically don't elevate it to the surgeon if there's kind of
Smaller stuff.
I want to say there's actually a line. Our billing team has a draws a line like at $50 or something like that. So if anything less than 50, like the billing team and the manager can handle it, and whether
Mhm.
they want to refund it or not. And anything above that kind of goes up the chain. So
Okay.
we try to. Oftentimes, the conversations are when it comes to premium services, the premium
Sure.
lenses, and the outcomes related to that, because
Right.
we commit to, depending on the package or whatever, uh, that we try to provide the optimal vision. But even the optimal vision, uh, it doesn't satisfy the patient.
Doesn't always meet their expectations or so what they thought, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And do you guys have your own ASCs?
We do. We do.
Yeah. And so did you, since being the director of nursing, did you start more on the ASC side, or where did you start?
I did. I was originally hired to be one of the ASC managers,
Okay.
and I did that for about 4 or 5 months. And the person that was overseeing all the ASCs had left during that time, and so I guess they saw what they liked what they saw. They promoted me to over all the ASCs, and so that was
Uh-huh.
a for the first half of my time. That's what I did, and then eventually was over all the ASCs
Yeah,
and
yeah.
clinics.
Okay. Well, you're the perfect person to answer this question then. How do you get the because when you have ASCs that you own and then clinics that you own, sometimes the priorities are not in alignment, right? And sometimes it's and I'll paint a couple of the pictures. You can I'm sure you've probably heard some of them. The ASC will say, the clinic sent us this patient, the information is not complete, uh, information is not clear on what to do, information is not clear on what to collect. They scheduled them too soon. We didn't have time to pick the lens. We didn't have, that's usually the ASC side. And from the clinic side, it's like, they're canceling our patients. They're being too strict. They're being too rigid. I don't understand why they made the call to this patient. Now the patient's freaking out about their H&P. What's going on? So it feels like this merry-go-round that we're always trying to get the two teams to work harmoniously.
Yeah.
But and there's different things that people need to do in order to for us to have that patient experience be fluid on both sides, and also to meet our financial and surgical goals as well. And that we need to all kind of be on the same page, that we're trying to get patients into surgery, get them qualified, make sure that they're healthy enough to have surgery, get them through the whole process. But there's always like a kind of like a finger pointing on both sides of the fence. If you have experienced that, if you haven't, then you got to tell me how that's possible. But if you have experienced some of those things, how do you overcome them?
Yeah, absolutely, we've had those things, and what we found worked best for us is we eventually sat down with some key stakeholders from the clinic side, the surgery counselors, because that's kind of they bridge the gap,
Hmm.
and then the surgery side, and we basically created a flow sheet slash checklist, and what the big key to this is that it allowed everybody to kind of put a stop on the process. So like the clinic had 10 things they had to do before the patient could be moved to the counselor. The counselor had so many things they had to do before the patient could be moved to the surgery side. And what it allowed is that when that patient literally came with that sheet, and that counselor could at a glance look at the sheet, and if there was something missing, they could just say, this patient's not ready. They wouldn't have to talk to the patient and sit down and go through the process and then find out that uh, this document wasn't completed or what have you. And so it basically created a smoother process. So the clinic knew that don't even bother bringing them to the counselor if all these items aren't done yet. It's
Okay.
and by creating having that document and having that ability for everybody to kind of put a halt on the process and pushback's too strong a verb, but
Mhm,
basically say, the patient's not ready yet for the
mhm,
next, and it was all clear, it was all documented. That helped with a lot. There's still things that will happen.
mhm,
Uh, and we found that we would have to meet probably once a year, every 2 years, we would review the document and say, what tweaks do we need to make to the checklist. Um, but it by everybody adhering to that flow, that resolved a lot of things. But still, there are those
mhm.
situations. There's always exceptions, and we try to
Yeah,
work through that.
like
Uh,
like the surgeon said, I can get him on for next week.
one of the great things too is that we published that so that the surgeons were aware of the document too,
Mhm,
and we as an organization. Um, basically made the document more, I guess, more powerful than the surgeon. Like just because the
Mhm.
surgeon said,
Mhm.
if the patient, if the calcs aren't done, you don't get them scheduled.
Mhm.
Kind of thing. And by the team being able to, put a stop on the flow to make sure things are done, that resolved a lot of issues by having that
So
workflow.
the sheet you're talking about, is it a physical sheet
It's a
that you
little
guys fill
physical
out?
sheet, yeah, and every section has its own little color, so everybody knows what
Uh-huh.
section's theirs, and
And the patient transports it between the
well, usually like
sections?
the technician will come with there's like a packet,
Uh-huh.
even though we have EHR, there's still paper documents,
Sure.
and that's one of them. And so like when when the doctor's done with the consultation, they'll bring that packet. Sometimes the patient has left. We have sometimes we have surgery counselors in house, and sometimes they call remotely.
Mhm.
But the packet is delivered to the counselor, and with or without the patient. And if that surgery checklist is at the top, and
Mhm.
if that the clinic side is not done, the counselor is like, take it back. I don't even want
Yeah.
to see it.
Okay.
Don't leave it on my don't even leave it on
Mhm.
my desk.
Okay.
Kind of thing, until your section's done.
Yeah, I
So
mean, it sounds like it's, not a overly complex solution, but it sounds like it works. So I guess it means really what really matters is clear communication, that expectations are the same,
right.
so that everyone can do their piece. And because I was hoping you're going to say you had this great software solution or something that you've used and you love it. We'll do it.
Well, it could be made into a software. I think the idea too is that there are certain things that have to be done in the patient pathway. The patient in
Mhm.
every location's got a slightly different process. So we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but there's a process. It's just to make sure that before the patient moves on to the next part of the process, that everything's been done in each section.
Mhm.
Because what would happen is that that patient would move forward to the next process, and let's say you're responsible for scheduling the interpreter, kind of thing. So now this person that doesn't typically do that, they're either having to schedule for the interpreter themselves, or they're going to have to go back to the clinic or whoever is responsible and say, "Hey, this isn't done yet," and it becomes this
Mhm.
whole. And meanwhile, the patient's just marching along, and all of a sudden on the surgery day, they don't have an interpreter, the lens aren't ordered. The patient has an awful experience as
Right.
and meanwhile the team is trying to catch up, and
Right.
then there's finger pointing going on, and a lot of stress because uh, they're having to play catch up, and rather than and I will note one other thing too that we did that is in case is in most cases is that the understand we had to communicate to the physicians is that it takes time to schedule surgery, uh, and so we put a basically, these most of our cases are elective. Uh, so we put like a 48-hour window. Don't come in the morning saying, "Hey, I want to schedule this patient for this afternoon." There are so many. We just let them know like we appreciate the fact that you want to schedule the patient this afternoon, but it's elective procedure. We're just going to schedule them for the next available surgery out, because we can't get everything done in time for that patient to have a good
Right.
experience. And so I should say, making sure that we communicate this with the surgeons, the whole process, so they understand uh, that there is a workflow, that there's a process, and it's not just for the advantage of the employees. It's we want that patient to have a good experience.
Mhm.
Example of this would be like the patient coming to surgery and the lens not being there, or the patient uh, getting a bill from the billing department because uh, their ASC copay wasn't paid or they weren't
Mhm.
aware of it.
Right. Right.
3 weeks after the surgery, they're getting a bill for $300, kind of thing.
Right.
That doesn't lead to a happy patient.
Right. Y- Yeah, and some of the one thing that we've been trying to the last couple of years is putting a person in the middle to make sure that the things that are needed along the journey are complete. We call it surgical coordinators. So we kind of put in between the counselors and then the ASC so that they can pass information back and forth, collect payment ahead of time as much as possible. And it seems to have helped. It's still a work in progress, but maybe you need to email me that sheet and we can take a
Sure.
look at it. uh,
Yeah, it's just part of the process too is the fact that clinics and the ASCs have to be separate, and that causes
right,
they're part of the same team, but they're separate, and
right,
it causes difficulties sometimes.
right. Well, I think what I want to know too. If you're looking ahead, if we know what the challenges in this industry are, and we're continuing to bring in new people and trying to add providers to the practice and trying to grow. What do you think with knowing some of those challenges? What are some of the skills and mindsets that us and the next generation of leaders have to have in order to be successful?
You know, I think the ability to pivot quickly. Uh, I, I guess let me 2 things. I think, the ability to pivot quickly, and make changes, and when I say quickly, that could be 30 days, 60
Mhm,
days, 180, sometimes, uh, changing an EHR, most people would say it takes you a year, but being able to do it in 6 months, it would be considered very quick.
mhm,
But, uh, organizationally, we had an issue where our EHR, uh, basically suddenly sunset. I don't know if you knew about integrity. I think it was integrity.
yep.
Uh, yeah, all of a sudden we're scrambling to pivot and get a new EHR in. Uh, and so being able to pivot, I was also here during COVID.
Mhm,
In the Pacific Northwest, the response was dramatic by our Department of Health. I'll leave it at that. Uh, but
mhm,
being able to pivot quickly based off of those changes and those sudden things that might happen.
mhm,
Um, but then also, it's really important to look ahead. I'm always telling my managers and directors, lift your head up, look down the road. Uh, Too often, managers are just looking at next week or even the end of the week, and I'm like, you should be looking right now, your manager should be planning for January and February.
mhm,
We
mhm,
should, the plans for the end of the year should already be done.
mhm,
We should be looking at first quarter. Directors, you should be looking at mid 2026. And me as a member of the C suite, I should be looking at 26, 27, 28.
mhm.
Lift your head up, look down the road. It's too easy to just get sucked into this week or next month. And if you're just looking at next month, you're looking at your feet, and you're gonna not see the tree coming your way.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. One example that I can think of to illustrate that point is in years past, we used to scramble in the fourth quarter trying to figure out how to get more surgery time, and we started doing it mid-year, like end of summer. We have our teams look for and us as a executive trying to forecast what that might be, and then opening up surgery days, 4, 5, 6 months in advance and building the schedule based off what we think is going to happen. And it ultimately grows your ability to do more because you're not scrambling, you're thinking ahead. So I think that's great advice and a great point. I think we have to be able to pivot, but also think ahead. Um, any any lasting words from the great Pacific Northwest? What's the weather over there right now? Making jealous.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic. I think it's sunny 65 out right now.
Yeah, I
And
saw that sweet vest you had on. I was like, I couldn't wear that because I'd be sweating bullets in here.
yeah, it was a crisp 50 this morning, and
Nice.
so yeah, we'll have nice weather like that through September into October, and then the
Yeah.
rainy season comes in. So
Yeah. Yeah. You can call me when it's like December, January. Then I'm like, aha, come over here. It's like 65.
yeah, well, I
uh,
I grew up in Louisiana, so I know what it's all about.
yeah. Well, Lance, I really appreciate you joining. It was great to catch up with you, and I think great for everybody to hear your words of wisdom, and very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
I also want to thank our listeners for joining us today. If you want to keep up with the podcast and interesting conversations with our guests, don't forget to subscribe and please share us with your friends on social media. Another shout out to Boost Patients for producing the podcast. Boost helps ophthalmology practices get more new patients without spending a dime on marketing. You can learn more about them at their website, boostpatients.com, or check out the show notes. Hang in there, ophthalmology gurus. We'll get through the experience together. Have a great week.